If you had asked me 5 years ago whether I had self-respect, I would have said, of course I do. But I didn't. Because you can't have self-respect if you're the one creating chaos in your own life. You can't respect yourself while your choices keep costing you peace. I didn't understand that at the time. I thought self-respect was a feeling, confidence, strength, believing in yourself. It isn't. Self-respect shows up in what you do, in the quiet repetitions that build it, and in the dramatic moments that reveal it. When I started changing my choices, really seeing my future self and deciding how I wanted to feel long-term, something shifted. As my actions stopped complicating my life, I began to feel lighter, freer. And then it hit me. What I was feeling wasn't hype. It wasn't confidence. It was self-respect. And it was the result of all the skills in this series applied consistently. Understanding what a choice is and what it does, emotional regulation, boundaries, trust, identity, all of it feeds into this. This is the capstone, because self-respect isn't something you declare. It's what naturally forms when your choices start protecting you instead of costing you. Here are 6 understandings of self-respect to help you build yours more confidently. Number 1, what self-respect actually is. Self-respect is not how you talk about yourself in your head, and it's not how confident you sound around other people. It's how you behave when you're tired, pressured, lonely, or tempted. Self-respect lives in patterns, not moments, and it shows up over time. You don't earn it with one big decision or lose it with one mistake. It's built slowly through repetition. At its core, self-respect is the ability to act in a way that doesn't quietly harm you. That's it. It doesn't mean life is always comfortable or easy, but it does mean you stop volunteering for situations that consistently cost you peace. When you respect yourself, you don't need to prove it to anyone. You just move differently. And that difference starts to shape your future in ways you can't see right now, but you will feel. Here's the part most people miss. Self-respect isn't something your brain decides. It's something your nervous system learns. Your system is constantly tracking one simple question. Do my choices keep me safe and stable, or do they put me in situations that cost me? Over time, it answers that question for you without asking your opinion. That answer becomes how calm or tense you feel in daily life. This is why people can say all the right things about themselves and still feel unsettled. Their words and actions aren't aligned. They tell themselves they matter, but then repeatedly overextend, stay silent when something feels wrong, or say yes just to avoid discomfort. The nervous system doesn't respond to speeches. It responds to patterns. Self-respect begins when your actions start sending a different signal. Number 2, self-respect is behavior, not identity. A lot of people think self-respect is something you either have or don't have, like a personality trait. That belief keeps people stuck because it turns growth into an identity problem instead of a behavioral problem. Self-respect isn't who you are, it's what you practice. You can build it, you can weaken it, you can strengthen it again, and adjust it over time. That's good news, because it means you're not locked into a fixed version of yourself. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you add a brick. Every time you override your own limits or talk yourself into something you know isn't good for you, you remove one. There's no drama in that. It's just cause and effect. Your nervous system learns whether you are someone who can be trusted based on what you repeatedly do. When your actions line up with your well-being, your system settles. When they don't, it stays alert. Repetition trains the system. Intention doesn't. This is why people can want better lives and still feel stuck in the same emotional loops. Wanting doesn't create stability. Demonstrated behavior does. Think about how trust works between people. You don't trust someone because they promise to be reliable. You trust them because they are reliable over time. Your nervous system applies that same logic to you. When you follow through on small commitments, going to bed when you're tired, leaving when something feels off, stopping a habit that drains you, your system begins to trust you. That trust feels like steadiness. The opposite is also true. When you repeatedly override your own limits, your system doesn't label you bad, it simply stays alert. That alertness can feel like anxiety, irritability, or low-grade tension. Understanding this removes self-blame. You weren't broken. Your system was responding logically to mixed signals. Self-respect brings those signals back into alignment. Number 3, what you tolerate teaches you how to live. One of the clearest places self-respect shows up is in what you tolerate. Not once, not accidentally, but repeatedly. What you let slide becomes your normal, even if you don't like it. This applies to how people treat you, how you treat yourself, and what environments you stay in longer than you should. Over time, tolerance stops feeling optional. It becomes baseline. When you tolerate things that drain you, confuse you, or shrink you, your nervous system adjusts to that. Not because you're weak, but because the brain adapts to repetition. Self-respect interrupts that pattern by saying, "This costs me too much," and adjusting behavior accordingly. Sometimes that means leaving. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means ending a habit that only existed because you were used to it. Tolerance works quietly. It slips in through, "It's not that bad," or "I'll deal with it later," or "This is just how things are." And once something feels normal, you stop questioning it. That's how people end up living in conditions they would never recommend to someone they care about. This doesn't only apply to how others treat you, it applies to how you talk to yourself, how much rest you allow, and how often you ignore your own discomfort. Each time you repeatedly override your well-being, your system learns that it isn't a priority. That lesson spreads. Self-respect doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like shorter conversations, fewer explanations, or less access. Sometimes it means changing your environment instead of trying to fix your feelings. And here's the quiet shift. When you stop tolerating what exhausts you, life often feels easier, not because you added effort, but because you removed friction. Number 4, what you repeat becomes your future. Self-respect is tied to repetition. Your life doesn't move in the direction of your intentions. It moves in the direction of your habits. The small choices you repeat shape your energy, your relationships, and your sense of self. That's why self-respect isn't loud or dramatic. It's consistent. When you repeatedly choose what supports you, even in quiet ways, your future begins to stabilize. You feel less reactive, less scattered, less pulled around by other people's moods or expectations. Not because you become colder, but because your system learned that your choices reduce chaos instead of multiplying it. Over time, that creates a calm that doesn't depend on circumstances behaving perfectly. Your future is shaped less by big decisions and more by what you practice on autopilot. Habits train your nervous system in the background, like software running quietly while you focus on something else. Repetition matters more than motivation. Motivation fades, patterns stay. When your repeated choices support stability, even boring ones, your system stops bracing for impact. You feel grounded, not because life became perfect, but because your internal environment became predictable. And predictability is calming. Chaos, even exciting chaos, is not. This also explains why change feels uncomfortable at first. When you interrupt an old pattern, your system hasn't adjusted yet. That discomfort doesn't mean the choice was wrong. It just means it's unfamiliar. Self-respect includes tolerating that discomfort long enough for the new pattern to take hold. Number 5, walking away is a skill, not a failure. One of the most misunderstood parts of self-respect is the ability to walk away. Walking away doesn't mean you lost, gave up, or couldn't handle something. Most of the time, it means you noticed the cost and chose not to keep paying it. That's not weakness, it's clarity. When you step away from something that consistently drains you, your nervous system shifts. There's relief, even if there's also sadness or disappointment. That relief isn't random, it's information. It tells you something wasn't aligned, not that you were wrong for caring. Self-respect listens to that information instead of overriding it with guilt, fear, or the need to be liked. Walking away requires emotional regulation, not toughness. Your system has to stay steady enough for you to recognize the cost of staying. When people can't walk away, it's often because they're flooded. Fear, guilt, hope, or attachment is running the show. As your ability to regulate improves, so does your ability to choose differently. And here's the quiet truth. Walking away often happens before things become unbearable. That's why it can look unnecessary from the outside. You're not waiting for proof or permission. You're responding to patterns. And yes, sometimes you'll walk away from something that could have continued, but at a cost that you weren't willing to pay. Afterwards, the emotions can mix together: relief, grief, clarity, calm. That combination confuses people, but it's normal. Relief signals alignment. Sadness signals that something mattered. Self-respect allows both without turning either into a reason to go back. Number 6, a calm life is built, not found. A calm life doesn't come from avoiding problems or controlling other people. It comes from making choices that reduce internal conflict. Self-respect allows that to happen over time. When your actions stop contradicting your well-being, your system settles. You stop fighting yourself, and that changes everything. This is why maturity often looks quieter. There's less explaining, less reacting, less proving, not because life got easier, but because choices got clearer. Self-respect simplifies your life by removing what doesn't belong, one decision at a time. Calm isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about internal alignment. When your choices stop fighting what actually supports you, your system relaxes. That's why calm tends to increase with maturity, not because older people feel less, but because they've learned which battles aren't worth the cost. Self-respect also reduces decision fatigue. When you know your standards, fewer things require debate. You don't overthink every choice because you already understand your direction. That simply creates space, mentally and emotionally. The quiet payoff is this: when your life becomes calmer, your thinking becomes clearer. Clearer thinking leads to better choices. Better choices reinforce self-respect. That loop builds stability over time, without force, hype, or constant effort. It's not flashy, but it is resilient. Everything you've learned in this series feeds into self-respect. It is the natural outcome of understanding cause and effect, emotional regulation, boundaries, trust, and identity. You don't need to force it or perform it. You just need to keep choosing in ways that don't quietly harm you. Over time, those choices shape your future, your peace, and your sense of self. And that's how a good, steady life is built. Not loudly, not perfectly, but intentionally. If you've been practicing these skills, then you already know something feels different. Maybe it's subtle. Maybe it's just less chaos and more clarity. But it's there. And I am genuinely happy for you. Because this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the version of you that you can love. Because your choices reflect the kind of person you want to be. Keep doing that. It only gets stronger from here. In the description below, you will find a companion PDF with simple questions to help you notice how these patterns show up in real life, along with a written version of this video that you can read, follow along with, and return to later. I will see you over the horizon.